Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Next in Time podcast. I'm your host, ST Tangarella, and today our guest is none other than Dr. Jamilah Merrick. She is the founder and CEO of Ethose. She is looking to provide the first Web 3.0 marketplace for decentralized music, entertainment, fashion, metaverse deployments, fintech, and DeFi. Her company, Ethose, is that Web 3.0 marketplace and a launch pad that provides simplification, effective monetization, and strategic amplification of Web 3.0 products and services. And so she is looking to make a massive impact in the Web 3.0 stage, and she's already building that connection and network with everyone, even big top names who are wanting to get involved with the Web3 space. So, Dr. Jamila, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, ST. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here as well. I'm glad to finally get to meet someone who is in the Web3 space, because I think I already had one interview prior, but he was mostly an investor. But now I really got to meet someone who gets involved with the Web3 space like day in and day out. And I'm glad that, I want to see how the vision of how Web3 can turn out for a lot of people. And
Awesome.
Cool. So yeah, I just want to know more about like what's your current status right now with Ethos? Like, what are you trying to work on?
Yeah, well, right now we're validating our MVP. We did one MVP launch at the beginning of August, and we tested our startup accelerator program. Really wanted to see what was the response, and it was a tremendous response. I think I talked to over maybe 60 founders that month, and we were able to advise a lot of them and get them in for funding. I think we pre-qualified over $27 million in funding for startups. And then another 16 million went in for additional rounds of funding where, they're getting more closer to closing their seed or series round. So that was a really good test of the market, that this decentralized platform had a pulse to it.
Right.
It had a good sentiment. And then I said, well, we're not just a startup accelerator. We really want to be a marketplace that starts to centralize what Web3 is so people can make sense of it. So we're now rolling out our Ethos Beauty, and that will be going out for the holiday season. You'll have to wait and see. We are working with an Emmy-nominated stylist who styles Vin Diesel, Denzel Washington's wife, and many other celebrities. He works on a very popular Netflix show. So we are going to be very excited about rolling that out. And I think it's going to set a new precedent of what Web3 is in everyday consumer goods and services.
Right, because I think you're one of the few people that I know that is looking to really get into the Web3 on a much wider scale. Like, people out there, they're mostly focused on, maybe just owning one startup in the Web3 space, or let's say they're just looking to if you're in crypto, they're mostly looking to trade. But I think what you're doing is like a massive vision in terms of how you want to like really grow the Web3 space. It's beyond just simply just being like, okay, another round of NFTs and also crypto and just, doing DeFi related stuff. It's like, it's a wider spectrum that you're trying to tackle. Is that true?
Yeah, that's very true. And I think it's coming from a consumer perspective. I saw how narrow the focus was for decentralized applications that most people couldn't understand or didn't want to use. And it just became obvious that everyone was waiting for this mass adoption. And I'm thinking, everyone's next to the bean dep at the party and no one's coming because it's too complicated. So we need to start thinking like a consumer. And what do consumers buy? What do they want in Web2? And we need to apply those applications. What's that?
You said Web3, not Web2. I think were you comparing both Web2 and Web3, or what's the case there?
Yeah, well, Web2 is the comparison, right? Because we need to do things that are similar in Web2, but we're applying the technology in Web3. What we were trying to do early on in Web3 is create a whole new learning curve for consumers. That's not how adoption works. It's never going to happen that way. No one wants to use some type of D app that you have to use on a pancake swap to try to buy crypto. A very small, limited amount of people are going to want to do that. They want it as seamless as a banking experience. So I really wanted to come into Web3 with the concept of what does Web3 actually provide value? What does it provide in terms of value to the consumer? And what are other use cases in Web 2 that should be our model? And I think Amazon is one of those in terms of a marketplace.
Yeah.
Web 3 should be as easy as signing up for an Amazon Prime account.
So I think I'm
Period.
like, yeah, I would just say right now we are kind of like in the cusp of Web3, but before that, like let's just say if you were to compare yourself to like the mid to late 2000s, it was the Web2 taking taking precedent, especially with the social media apps and e-commerce. I think before like Web 1 was just like simple internet stuff. You just Google search and all that stuff, and then now evolved into social media, and now it's trying to be into like a full-fledged digital world where you have like all these kinds of areas like the metaverse. You got the DeFi related aspects. You got the crypto trading, crypto like related stuff, and when you and even just buying and selling NFTs. So that's like the four key areas that I've been mostly exposed to in the Web3 space. But do you feel like there's more beyond that?
Yeah, well, really, what you're going to start seeing is number one, in film, you're going to start seeing a lot of crowdfunding film projects on the big screen with NFTs. So there's just going to be this social component, this co creative component where people are going to be able to democratize a lot of these industries that were really much gated behind private entities. So the democratization is going to be really big. Also, this idea of digital autonomy. I know Jack Dorsey is talking about Web 5, this whole privacy and security. I don't know how well that's going to work with the SEC and a lot of regulations, but there's a strong push for digital autonomy. And then there's also the applications of like responsive AI and different applications within AI um, fused within our creative processes, such as stable diffusion, and also just in the broader sense of how we're going to provide machine learning for a lot of the new applications we're looking at in Web3. So I think there's a really neat blend, but I think what we'll see initially is pushing into the metaverse and exploring what that looks like, interoperability, where one wallet can connect with multi-chain blockchains and also multi-chain websites, so that you can everything can be how would you say interconnected. So if you go to one metaverse, your avatar will be able to be in that another metaverse at the same with the same outfits and the same use case. So I know Yuga Labs with Steve Aoki and BayYC and a few others are trying to explore that with the Metaverse Alliance. But we'll see how far it goes and if people even want it, because right now the metaverse is an idea, but it's not something that really people are
Yeah,
gravitating to.
I mean, like
So
if you see recently, like Mark Zuckerberg really creating his version of the metaverse with, how he converted Facebook into Meta, and I was trying to tackle the metaverse, and there has always that's been kind of controversial about it, but still, it's like it's an interesting thing happening at the moment with the metaverse.
yeah, I think it's a application that's searching for a problem. I don't think they've really found the use case. I think
Yeah,
they're trying to create something appealing. And then when Zuckerberg came in with like he's going to take 50% of revenue, it's like it's never going to work. He's kind of late to the party because they've already created really extensive communities in Web3, and they've already created their own identity of what they believe is Web3. And I don't believe a privatization or institutionalization approach the way Meta is taking is going to resonate with a lot of Web3 early adopters. It may resonate with the 97% of people who are not in Web3, but I
yeah.
don't think it will appeal to the current ones.
All right, sounds good. So I think that was a good discussion on Web3, but let's get to know more about Dr. Jamilah. Like, what made you decide to really go into this space? Because I know when I look at your background, you have a PhD, or are you working on a PhD? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I do have a doctorate degree in semiotics and future studies. So
Yeah,
it is a professional degree. Yeah. And I just finished that in May of this year.
congratulations. But yeah, just tell me about your background and like where you come from and what made you like become very vested into the Web3 space.
Yeah, well, I don't know quite who your audience is, so they may like me or they may not. But I came into Web3 because I wanted to create a better world, a safer world, a more equitable world. And so I'm a minister by trade. I've done everything from being a youth minister to being a school principal at a parochial school to teaching in a parochial school. I've done a lot of things within the church. And I just saw that there was a new paradigm that needed to manifest, and it wasn't going to happen in the current paradigm and the current structure. So I studied the last 3 years on equity and trying to figure out how we can create a more sustainable, a more fair world. And I really landed on Web3. And so a lot of my journey has been solving that question, with my own experiences, my own opportunities that have come to me from being a school principal, like I said, to even doing things like in Argentina and Mexico, different places that I went to serve. And so as a mom, I'm a mom of three, I've been home a lot with my children, raising them. And it was just a really opportune time to get back into, I think, a new industry that had a lot of promise. And my whole thesis was about how do we create a more equitable world? How do we change structures? And I think Web3 was really that revolutionary application that I think I could see there being a new horizon. And so I've just lived my life in a way of how do we coexist? How do we change the world? And not just so utopic. I want to be practical. Like, how do we do that in a phased approach that's sustainable and that allows everyone to have a voice? And so that's been my mission. That's been kind of my clarion call. And it's a place that's taken to me to a lot of different leadership positions. And so I've always felt being in innovation was one thing that we needed to pursue because the tech space has so much potential and also a lot of money to help and do good. So my first company I started was back in 2016 or 15, and I created I was doing research and design for a smartwatch, and I attracted he's actually a Forbes 30 under 30 right now, but back then he had created the smallest smartphone in the world. And so it was then that I knew that I didn't have to be a technical founder. I just needed to have great vision. And so I've kind of led with that and really, saw that was kind of my superhero strength. And that's what's kind of compelled me to stay in a lot of the YC Combinator, schools year on end. I think I've been with them since 2015, learned lean startup principles, learned a lot of agile principles to be able to run a company like I am right now. So
Like, have you ever? Yeah, I was just wondering, have you ever run a company before, like a startup, or is this your first real startup you're working on?
Yeah, I've ran one before, and we all have our failures, right? At that point, when I was running my first technical company, just wasn't the right time. And we had a family tragedy at that time. And so I had to put that down. But I learned a lot because at that point I was going through research and design. I was actually getting something patented. And so I learned a lot of technical skills at that point. But this is, I think, the first company where from the ground up, building robust systems and processes, dealing with a lot of different verticals at the same time, and then being successful at doing it at the same time. So I have about a 96% closing rate with any client that comes through my door. I'm most likely going to onboard them to Ethose.
What's the secret to closing to getting that 96% close rate? If I could find a salesperson who could do that for one of my companies, I'd be like, you know what, I'll be loaded by now. But but that's just a figure of thought. But I'm just wondering, like, how do you normally close? What's your secret to closing very like at a high rate?
Yeah, what I found is people don't want to be sold, right? I think everyone just wants to feel like a human. I talk to all of my clients just like how I'm talking to you. Actually, I'm a little bit more funner because this is a podcast. I actually have a lot more fun on my calls, and we just have a good time. We make a connection. I hear who they are. They find out who I am. I bring enthusiasm because I'm very passionate about what I'm building, and it resonates because you have to be really passionate. You have to believe in what you are selling. And I remember at one time I was like a Mary Kay way back when, a Mary Kay consultant, and I didn't believe I mean, Mary Kay is a good product, but I didn't believe that someone needed a $30 eyeliner when they could go get a $9.99 eyeliner at the store. So I never conveyed that passion. And so on my calls, I'm very passionate, I'm very authentic. And literally, I threw my script out the door. I said, you know what? No one wants to be sold. And at every meeting, I tell people, I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm just going to see what you need and how I can help you. And hopefully, we can find a good opportunity to work together.
Got it. Got it. And so right now, with with all your experience, now you started to eat those, which is now you're trying to build a marketplace for Web3 related aspects. So, how did you, how did you start the company?
Yeah, well, first I became I started a crypto academy. I learned a lot about crypto, buying and holding. I learned a lot about Fibonacci. I said, wow, this is a very technical field. I even learned a lot about the Forex exchange market and high frequency trading. So I got a lot of education before I came into Web3. I started becoming a holder of a NFT project called Ethereal Collective, and they're able to showcase NFTs all around the world. They have partnerships with World of Women and Doge Pound Studio and a few other really big NFT projects. And by being a holder, I was able to showcase my NFT in London at one of their events. And I said, wow, this is just great, such a great experience. And so getting involved in Discords, meeting people in the community, I was really able to understand Web3 from a very native perspective and see, okay, what are the deficiencies here? What do people need? What are they really struggling with? And I saw one of the biggest thing was privacy and security. So many people were losing their money being involved in Web3. And so I said, let me figure out how to fix that. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was create a very secure blockchain. And so we're still doing research and development on creating our own first layer one blockchain and solution. And there was other things like in terms of community and use case. And I just began to start listening to the pulse in the Twitter spaces, in the discords, and started to really understand what the problems were. And I said, hey, they're having a consumer problem. They want something that they can use. They're not wanting something more technical or something more shiny. They're wanting something parallel to what they're already getting in a Web2 world. So that made me start to think a lot more practically about Web3 and start to build with that premise in mind.
That makes sense. It's like you're trying to really fuse all different kinds of elements of the Web3 of the space itself into one, right? So, what do you feel like are the challenges you're currently facing? Because right now, when we spoke before, you said you only have one or two, like two people on your team, and you're looking to grow. You're looking to grow, and also you're looking to make this wider impact. Like, do you have like a particular focus first before you go into wider areas?
Well, we are going to test our first marketplace, our second marketplace, because we already did our startup accelerator. We're going to be doing our marketplace of beauty. And so that one is really important because women are very underrepresented here. And so they are one of the least represented groups here in Web3. So beauty and Web3 and NFTs is going to be a really cool way to be able to seamlessly integrate them. And I can't give the alpha yet, ST, so you'll have to wait to see what we're going to do for our MVP, but it's going to be very, very exciting. We are going to be in a mall, so we're going to provide some really tangible aspect to Web3, and we're really excited about that.
All right, cool. So what do you feel right now that what you're focusing on is beauty. So other than the fact that you're focusing on, I think you've already told about your story that you're really passionate about solving equity like issues, in a way. So like what's the catalyst as to why you really want to get into solving these kinds of issues?
Yeah, well, I just think it's not sustainable for the disparity that is there. It will take 333 years for minorities to gain wealth parity, who are business owners to gain wealth parity with non-minorities. Whereas if we allocate 1% from companies, if they just allocated 1% year on end, we could close that gap in 15 years. So the issue is a matter, I call in my thesis, moral courage. We don't have people at the helm of these big companies, at the helm of trillion-dollar companies who have moral courage to do the right thing. We really don't need legislation. We need bigger hearts. And so I want to be one of those founders who says, hey, I'm going to be kind of like this guardian of Web3. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do great things. I'm going to build a unicorn company, hands down, undeniable. It will be one. But I'm going to be a social entrepreneur where part of those funds go back into community revitalization. They go back into equipping our communities. It's like a circular economy. And I think if more people do that, we could solve those problems. But it just takes one, and then one becomes a spark, and then, we can create a revolution.
Yeah, basically a lot of social movements always started off with one person, then expanded to three people, and then from there it just became like a what do you call a feedback loop, right? In a way, like it starts growing into like millions of people at the end.
Exactly. And I think it just starts with that. And I'm not naive to say everyone's going to be on board, and not everyone has to be on board. Everyone has a choice to be. But I think when the right people make the right sound and do it in the right way, I think it will compel people to say, hey, there's a better way for capitalism to be accessible. And there's a better way for us to not hoard wealth, but to create more wealth for the people who need it, and to redistribute it in a way that makes sense. Because it's not, I always tell people, this is not a 501(c). I'm not building a 501(c), but we can do social good and make revenue at the same time.
Yeah, funny, because the funny thing is, when I was in graduate school, I used to hang around the entrepreneurial center, and well, I think one of my like one of the head of the entrepreneurship center. I don't know if he's the head or not, if he was back then, but he always said this interesting fact that it's not gonna be the government that solves the problems. It's gonna be businesses. Like any problem out there that needs to be solved, it's gonna be solved by businesses. So I feel like that statement rings true today even.
Yeah, that's very true. And it is will be businesses, because the SCOTUS defined a business as a person. So if a business is a person, what kind of people are we? Right?
We're
What kind
business
of people?
people.
Right? No, but what kind of people are we? What's our personality? What's our values? What's our ethics? Right? And if we could start defining our businesses in terms of personhood, of what we want a good person to be, we can start redefining what a good company should be.
Makes sense. And so what you're making this massive impact in the Web3 and like the social community space. So what do you feel like are the challenges that you're seeing in order to foster that vision?
I think the biggest one is getting people to understand what Web3 is. It's so fragmented that people are like, I don't want it. I've heard so much bad things about it. It's a scam. So there's a real high learning curve for people. Well, I wouldn't say high learning curve. There's a lot of things that you have to overcome to get anyone to even listen about coming into the space. And then the complexity, it's a very high learning curve. So finding applications that people can use that are user friendly. We're developing a relationship with one company that hopefully when we start minting our NFTs, they use fiat. You don't have to use crypto to mint an NFT. And so applications like that make it as seamless as a Web2 experience, I think are going to be really important. But also having people trust that you actually want to actually help them, because there's so much fear that you're just trying to scam someone. And so when I tell them we're developing a platform where both creators and users can benefit, where your participation, you can earn rewards and you can earn crypto and you can earn gift cards, people think like, well, what are you trying to do to me? Right? They're not trusting.
Yeah,
But
yeah. It's just I'll tell
you
you this
know,
because do you ever I just want to have a side note. Just wondering, have you ever come across these group chats where you've got a lot of people like saying that you have another crypto thing happening? Let's bring all people in. Let's invite them all to the WhatsApp group chats or Telegram group chats. Like, let's gather all people together. Have you had that experience?
I've had a lot of that for Twitter. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like crowdfunding for or crowd hoarding for Twitter Spaces, and then also like in Discord. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because those types of groups have become kind of like, it's like, what's the point of joining a group when you don't know what's going on? It's like it's just basically, it's like the one thing I've noticed like in the crypto space was that the way it was accumulating its value, like how Bitcoin and everything. I think it felt like because everyone just kept huddling together and kept showcasing that it's important to buy Bitcoin because it's if you buy the Bitcoin at this price or buy Ethereum or any crypto at a certain price, it will go up when everyone starts getting into it. Is that kind of true in a way? Like you're huddling people together and just like let's buy it all at once and then make the price go up.
Exactly. We call that FOMO, that fear of missing out. And like that bright, shiny object, we're looking at this very shiny thing, and we kind of almost get, I call it like bamboozled. You get like hypnotized and you
Yeah.
like lose all sense of reason. And it's kind of like this group thinking. It's like a group think, oh, it's going up, everyone go up. And you start not to think as an individual and what's good for your pocket, what's good for your bottom line, your risk to reward. And it's just like jump in. And so, some people jump in, they get lucky. Other people, a lot of people lose their shirt, their bonnet, and they're running down the street with nothing on. So unfortunately,
Yeah,
um,
I currently have a little bit of crypto on I've saved some money on crypto, but at the same time, I'm not. I initially thought when I got into into Web3 space, the whole purpose of my belief was that okay, we believe in decentralization. We want to have autonomy with with the things we build. That's kind of what I thought, and then for some reason, it's just been I feel like that focus has been hijacked into more like let's make money out of this, rather than let's have autonomy. Oh,
yeah, and I think again it goes back to that capitalistic mindset. Unless you have people who have some moral sense and moral compass, it kind of lends itself to that. And then you see these, they call them whales, these big whales that buy up everything, who can actually control the value of Bitcoin. Because when they cash out and they move their money into a wallet, Bitcoin it tanks. And so there is a lot of market manipulation out there. And so you have to be careful, but you have to understand the long-term value of what crypto will be, and also the short-term gains that you might be able to have. And you have to, I always suggest, talk to a registered investment advisor, talk to someone certified in blockchain technology, do your research, and make sure you're not just jumping into something because someone told you something on Discord or Telegram. You wouldn't buy a mortgage like that. You wouldn't buy a car like that in
yeah,
general.
I mean,
So don't
imagine.
do that
I,
with
I
crypto.
I think practically the banks were doing that prior to 2008, right? Like just get everyone to buy houses, and in order in order to increase the the average price of a home around the United States.
Yeah. Well, I talked to a registered investment advisor. We're actually having one coming on to Ethos who's registered with the SEC. And we are going to be opening up our Ethos Learning Academy and next year. But he told me a lot about mortgage. He's been in mortgages, I think, for 30 years. And he explained to me in a nutshell the reason why people lost their homes and they continue to lose their homes in a recession, when the economy is in recession, it's not because they couldn't pay their mortgage, but because their loan to value was unequal, and the Wells Fargo or the Chase or whoever they have a mortgage with knocks on their door. I'm being hypothetical, but sends them a letter. Hey, you owe us $30,000 to keep your home, not because you're behind on mortgage, but because your loan to value is unequal, and that is why people cannot pay their mortgages. And so we are going to be rolling out something very robust in our fintech division to really address the issue of mortgage inequity and providing more. How would you say, effective strategies for homeowners not to lose their homes. And so just know that Ethos, it's not just beauty, we're not just NFTs, we're very holistic, and we are looking
like
at those. Yeah.
like how the internet has been like a lifesaver for a lot of industries in a way. I think is that what you're trying to do is like be the lifesaver for, let's say, for example, with the entertainment industry, with what you're doing with the Emmy Award. Is it produced the makeup artist? I forget which one was it.
Yeah, so we have an Emmy nominated stylist coming on to Ethos.
Yeah,
And then we also have an Emmy award winning producer that's coming on to Ethos as well.
right. So it's basically what you're trying to do is get your wings over, like basically how the internet has helped out many industries altogether. Like what you're trying to do is like have Web3 kind of take control of all the industries that are struggling. Is that what you're trying to do? And then elevate them?
That's part of it. There's one side of the coin. I think there's industries that are in distress that Ethos will be a great leverage to, and there's industries that are already doing very good in Web 2, but they're exploitive. The music industry is very exploitive, right? You make 0.004 cents on Spotify a stream for as an artist. So you can have millions of streams and you can't pay your mortgage. So we want to provide a different avenue for artists. If they're going to be great artists and they have millions of followers, why can't they like pay their mortgage and buy food and have a decent car?
All right.
They should be able to do that. And so it is kind of two sides of the coin for those, different industries that are in distress. Ethos is going to be a great leverage and also provide amplification. And those that are actually doing good, but they're exploitive, they're only serving the institution. We're going to provide a really powerful layer of democratization so that we can provide more equity and more balance in some of these industries that I think Web3 can revolutionize.
All right, sounds good. All right, cool. I think we're running out of time with our with our show. So let me just quickly ask one final question. Will be since you've been involved with the startup space for a long period of time, what advice would you give to other founders and visionaries of the future?
You have to be very practical as a startup. It starts as this really grand idea and you get really excited and it's almost like you're on a cloud nine. And then once you get down into the nitty gritty of it, it's a business. It's time, it's money, it's strategy. And you really, if you're going to bring on founders, you want to make sure everything is very clearly understood. You have an agreement. Hey, you're getting equity. You're not getting a salary. Some people don't understand that, right? And so you really want to provide as much clarity when you're coming into a startup as you can. You really want to have an honest conversation with yourself and your team of right expectations. And then you want to have reasonable goals because you can have your A goal, your supreme goal, your B goal, and your C goal, and really understand the market that you're in, the sentiment that's there, and be able to be, flexible because it's not a straight line. It is a wiggly line, and only the strong will survive. So have a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to come in as a startup founder. So, give yourself grace, give yourself time. And if you fail, get back up again because every great leader has had a failure.
All right, cool. Dr. Jamilah, thank you so much for being on the Next in Time podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing how Ethose can become this great change maker in the Web3 space.
Thank you, ST. It was a pleasure being with you today.